All right, well, I think we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm Cheryl Gruber, the middle school principal here at ASD, and we're really excited to bring you this topic today about managing technology and everything else in your home, which is a huge topic for parents. And our presenters today, I'm delighted to introduce our Miss Courtney Beck, who is our middle school counseling department chair, as well as our sixth grade counselor. And she's just back from maternity leave, so we're really happy that she's here. And Miss Heather McNeil-Roy, who is our school-wide academic technology coordinator, also a middle school parent. So two levels of expertise in this subject that we'll be talking about today. So our agenda for today really is just to talk about adolescent development, define some of the challenges that you may be experiencing at home, how to manage those challenges, potential ideas for some family agreements, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So if you can hold your questions or just put them in the Q&A as we go along, and we'll be using that Q&A to address questions that you have when we get to the end of the webinar. So first, we want to start out with a bit of a centering video for all of us to really think about why do we need to help middle school students develop self-management strategies. So it's about a 4-minute video. We invite you to just enjoy it, and I think you'll find some smiles along the way.
So you're reading an article online when you get an instant message with a link to a funny photo, which of course you have to share. And now you're reading your Facebook news wall, which sends you to a video of a panda bear attacking a kid. And now you're reading Wikipedia to learn everything you can about the violent behavior of panda bears. This is what 3 minutes on the internet can be like. We live like this all the time, and it has to have some kind of effect on us.
The net is making us more superficial as thinkers.
That is Nicholas Carr. He is the author of The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. To understand this whole thing better, we need to go way back in time to say, like, the prehistoric age.
You wanted to know everything going on around you, because the more you knew about your surroundings, the less likely you were to get attacked by a predator. And there's even evidence that our brains release some dopamine, pleasure-producing neurotransmitter chemical, to reward us for seeking out and finding new information.
So getting distracted felt good and helped us stay alive. But the problem is that nowadays, predators aren't much of an issue, but we still have the same brains. And also, there's the internet, which is...
It's an incredibly information-rich environment that the net creates for us, and that's why we use it so much. I mean, sounds, pictures, words, text. And what this tends to do is promote a sort of compulsive behavior in which we're constantly checking our smartphone, constantly glancing at our email inbox. We're kind of living in this perpetual state of distraction and interruption.
Which is dangerous because...
that mode of thinking crowds out the more contemplative, calmer modes of thinking.
And that focused, calm thinking is actually how we learn. It's a process called memory consolidation.
And that means the transfer of information from our short-term working memory to our long-term memory. And it's through moving information from your working memory to your long-term memory that you create connections between that information and everything else you know.
So you've got this awesome life-changing piece of information in your short-term memory, but then you hear that email ding and poof, there it goes. That email takes its place and you never get a chance to learn anything. All because of one distraction.
So attention is the key. And if we lose control of our attention or are constantly dividing our attention, then we don't really enjoy that consolidation process.
But I can hear it now. Someone out there is saying, what does learning matter if all the information in the world is just a Google search away? Well...
that is kind of shortchanging our intellects. If that's the way you're using your mind, just kind of searching very quickly and finding information and then forgetting it very quickly, you're never building knowledge. You're kind of thinking like a computer.
Which means that our very humanity is at stake. And it would be a shame if we all got assimilated because, well, humanity is pretty neat.
I really believe that if you look at the great monuments of culture, they come from people who are able to pay attention, who control their mind. That's what allows us to think in the highest terms, think conceptually, think critically, think in some very creative ways.
And it's this kind of thinking that's at risk, being eroded one cute cat video at a time. Don't get us wrong, the internet is good for lots of things, and it should be celebrated. But the best thing we can do for our minds is to find some time every day to unplug, calm down, and focus on one thing at a time. Your email and those cats will be here when you get back.
Okay, so again, my name is Courtney Beck, and I am the middle school department chair and the current grade 6 counselor. And we wanted to share that video with you all because we really did find that it was relevant to what we're discussing today, but I also found it very relatable even to us as adults. Before we even started the presentation, Ms. Gruber was like, okay, make sure everyone turns off their phones, and I turned down my office phone line, and it really is just to make sure that those distractions don't get in the way of the information that we're trying to share. So while this talk is geared toward middle school, I really do think it's a conversation that impacts all ages and all grade levels. So the timing of this presentation is also intentional. With the second semester just around the corner, it's a great time to really reflect on what has and has not been working, and to maybe re-examine or set some goals for this next semester for your student, or have your student do that. So some of you are new to having adolescents. Some of you might be experienced professionals with this age group. And even if you are, I think that you have probably found that each of your children who've gone through adolescence kind of did it in their own unique way. But for those of you who have not been through this lovely stage in their life, I do think it's important to understand where they're at developmentally so that you can move forward to help be in a supportive role, not in a role of where you're doing it all for them, but to really support them through this process of helping them be the best learner that they can be. So when we're working with this age group and when we're looking at the growth and change that they go through, we do tend to look at 4 different domains. And the first of those being socially. They're socially changing. They are finding that their peers are more important. So on that totem pole, their peers are at the top of it, and the parents are starting to dwindle down, where if there's a family event, they might choose a friend event to want to go to instead. They're also trying out different personas. So they might want to change their hair, dye it, or cut it. They might want to try different sports or an art class or something that they might not have been so keen to try before, but they're really trying to figure out who they are at this time. And of course, there's more online socializing. Physically, they might need some more sleep. Their internal clocks might be changing. And of course, puberty, they're going through puberty. So there's a lot of internal and external changes that you'll be noticing. Personally, they might be becoming more self-conscious. They might have some mood swings that you might be familiar with. They're more critical of themselves and of others, and they want more privacy. And they may question parental or really adult authority. Academically, they're thinking more abstractly. They're going to be having more homework as they enter into middle school. And really, it's kind of scaffolded so that 6th and 7th and 8th grade has more homework as you go along. And what else? They might be becoming more forgetful or more disorganized. So you might see them kind of regress in certain skills that they have already developed. And they may need, or they may have difficulty with planning and prioritizing. So all of these are connected to their ability or sometimes inability to self-manage. And these domains, I really do think, play a key role in their journey of becoming a more responsible digital citizen and learner. Thank you. So with all of these changes going on, how can you support? And I think the first most important way that you can support them is just simply by being available. If your child is coming to you, do your best to stop and listen. And I think with so much of what we're going to be presenting today, one of the really kind of key points is that you want to model this behavior. It's really hard to try to enforce something if you are not modeling it yourself. So if they're coming to you, I know we're all busy and I can be guilty of it myself, but if your child is coming to you It's not, let me pick up my phone and I hear what you're saying, because you're not really listening, you're multitasking, and that can be really hard to give that undivided attention. And that's what they're really after. So do your best to stop and listen, because it's not just about being physically present, it really is about being attentive to their needs. Show interest. So you might be completely bored and annoyed with their latest Fortnite game, or the latest TikTok trend, but try to continue to show that you're interested in what their interests are. Sit down and play the game with them. Watch the movie or their favorite show with them. Do the latest TikTok trending dance. It might be painful for you to do, but try it out. When you show that you're truly interested, your kids are more likely to open up. So have routines is the next piece of advice that I would give in supporting adolescents. And having routines might be as simple as having a family dinner. Every Tuesday, we are going to sit down, we're going to have a family dinner, we're going to put our phones away, we're going to put our computers away, but really giving them some sort of sense of control. They feel like they're in control of this. They know that it's coming, they know that it's happening, because at this age, they can feel really out of control in a lot of aspects of their lives. Be inclusive. And so I think, as I said, there's already so much happening to your kids. I think it's important to include them in these discussions. And that can be something as easy as an outing that you're going on, getting some input from them about where they want to go, to rules or to family agreements, which we'll be discussing later on in the presentation. But I think it's really important to include them in it. They want to be part of the conversation. And really, in terms of technology agreements, it might be a time for you to reflect on your own use, as I said, and then you'll be in a better place to model that behavior. And when you include your child in these conversations, I think one of the really big benefits is that when things go awry and there might need to be a consequence, they can't fully blame you. They are going to have some responsibility in that consequence or whatever it might be. So you can cut some slack for yourself there. And finally, I think it's important to be patient. As I said, with so many things going on just in our personal lives, in the world, and then you have this sometimes moody and completely irrational adolescent in your home, it can be really hard to take that breath and show the patience. But I really do encourage you, as much as you can, to give that patience to them, because you're that constant in their life. And I think it would go a long way if you can just remember to, as I said, take that breath and show as much patience as you can.
Hi there, I'm Heather Roy, and I am the Academic Technology Coordinator for pre-K up to grade 12. And I love technology, of course, but often our first solution to our children not paying attention, not focusing, spending too much time on their devices, our first reaction is to shut it all down. Stop the technology, put it away. But unfortunately, in this day and age, we can't do that. And so we have several challenges that we need to think about now that we're learning in different ways. First of all, schoolwork now does need the internet. Our students, if they are working in anything on Google, it requires an internet access, and it requires them to be using their device. We need them to be able to go on a meet. We need them to be able to interact with their classmates and their teachers. And so this is requiring a significantly greater use of their device than perhaps they had in the past. Our other challenge, of course, is the fact that our students need to be able to socialize with each other. And at this time, it may not be safe to meet in a large group. It may not be possible to meet up at the mall, but one thing they can do is meet up online. And what you're probably finding more and more now is that your kids are talking to each other while they're playing a video game online, that they may be chatting more often, that homework has become almost more social because they're working together, because they can't meet together the same way they would even at school. And so we need to look at this balance between the screen time that we may feel that there's too much, but also that balance of what do they need both socially and academically. So what do we need to do? First of all, we need to help empower our kids. This is the most important part. Empower them to recognize their distractions. What are the things that may be getting in the way of them being able to effectively use the technology for learning? We also need to help our kids develop self-management strategies. How do they know when they've spent 5 hours on a game? It's very easy to lose track of time. So how can we help them keep track of that? How can we help them recognize that they're not getting that higher level of memory and thinking because they constantly have their phone beeping while they're doing their homework? So these are some things we're going to talk about today, is how we can support them. We also need to recognize when there's problems. If you're feeling that this is out of control, that your child is not able to get their work done, they are not able to focus, they're up till 2 in the morning doing homework or gaming, then conversations need to happen, and we're going to talk a bit about that. And also make sure you work with your child's teacher. If your child is telling you that they have 5 hours of homework to do for social studies, then you need to check in with the teacher, because maybe there's a misunderstanding about what the homework is. Or maybe the teacher needs to help back you up in the fact that your child doesn't have 5 hours of homework. So make sure, again, that you work with your child's teacher. So the rest of this presentation, we're going to actually look at some practical management strategies that we can use at home. I also want to let you know as well that we'll have another document coming out after the presentation that will link you to how you can do the things that I'll be talking about. I'm not going to demonstrate them today, but I am going to suggest them to you. So let's take a look at what some of our management strategies are.
Okay, and the first of those being about location. And I'm sure that you guys have heard this, but I do think that it's, as I said, as we start second semester, it's a really great time to kind of reevaluate our learning environments. So you want to set up a learning environment for studying. By completing their work there repeatedly, they'll start to kind of begin to establish a routine. And I talked earlier about how important it is to have those routines. And when choosing a workspace, you want to try to limit distractions as much as possible. So people associate areas with different things, and we really do want students to have the opportunity to separate themselves from work and from leisure, so both physically and mentally. While bedrooms are not ideal, we do not want kids to be in their bedroom doing work. We understand that in some situations it just can't be avoided, especially with blended learning or online learning, and you have multiple people in the house. We understand that it can be a challenge. But please remember that the workspaces should be in a place where you can pop in at any time, and doors should always be open. So whether it's at the dining room table or the couch in the family room, which might be a little bit distracting, I think that it should be in a place, and your children should know that you're able to kind of pop over and be like, hey, what are you working on? What are you doing? So that it doesn't come as a surprise, because you want to kind of create that space of honesty and communication. So location is very important for that learning environment.
I totally agree. And one of the conversations we have with kids too is that idea that at any time your parents should be able to walk by, and you shouldn't be embarrassed or ashamed of what you're doing on your device. Because if that's the case, then you're not making appropriate choices. And one other thing we've talked about as well is that if you are using technology in your room, the door isn't closed. That at any time your mom or dad could pop by and say, hey, what's up? What's going on? And I know at my house, sometimes I wish I could shut the door because it's really noisy, but at the same time, it's great that I'm able to hear what's happening, what's going on, just an ear. It's not me being nosy per se, but I know that there's positive things happening. I would be more worried if my child was quiet in the door, closed with the lights off. I'd be more worried about if it's gaming on their own versus a social aspect of it. But keeping that in mind, that at any time, it should be a feeling in your family that people can walk in and out and visit, and it shouldn't be questioned or wondered about. Now, managing time is the next thing. And it's so easy to find that you don't realize how much time has gone past. I think if we refer back to that video, that idea that you started with one thing and then you researched this and you looked into this and then you found the link and then you found this idea and then you decided to send a text out to your friends. That's how we get easily lost in the wormhole or the rabbit hole, sometimes we call it. So we need to help kids manage their time. So you notice I've got a big picture of timers up there. And I do really believe strongly in timers. The idea that you can say, you've got 1 hour to take a break and do as you like, set your timer. Have the kids learn to set a timer. And by doing that, they then help themselves realize, wow, 45 minutes has already passed. Okay, I got to get back to work. I've taken my break. But what I do also recommend as well is that you don't say, okay, the hour's up, everything off, let's go. What's really important again is those warnings to say, hey, I see you've got 15 minutes left. You got 15 minutes left, start wrapping up, please. So there isn't an argument at the end that time's up. Everybody knows, and we're, again, respecting our kids' independence as well, but at the same time, we've made some agreements and let's stick to that. So let's let the kids learn how to manage both their free time, taking breaks, and also we need to help them recognize when they're multitasking. So if they find themselves switching tabs to play a quick little game on Chrome, if they find themselves going and researching other things that don't have to do with school, we want them to start being mindful and recognize that that's happening. And again, setting timers for themselves. I'm going to give myself 30 minutes to get this done. After 30 minutes, then I can start doing something else. Now, what do we need parents to manage? Well, for parents, you need to think about what are your time limits on evenings and weekends. When do you ask your kids to shut down? And I think that's really important. Gaming till 2 in the morning, especially for middle school students, they're not getting enough sleep. And we also aren't able to supervise or know if there's positive interactions happening. So you need to think about in your family, what works best for how late should they be using technology? And also giving them that time between shutting down and going to bed, because studies have repeatedly shown that idea for both adults and children, that we need to have a certain amount of time away from a screen to help us fall asleep better. And finally, you need to set the bedtimes. When do we shut down? When do we go to bed? That may have to be parent reinforced for a while. And again, it's easier to do this now, especially if your kids are in grade 6 and 7 and 8, and putting these things in place so that they carry that over when they're becoming more independent in high school. The other thing we want to help our kids to do is to manage their distractions. And there are many tools that the kids can use to do this. We're working with the kids in advisory as well to help them identify some strategies they use. The Mac computer comes with several tools that they can use, including the ability to do not disturb, which will turn off all notifications and make sure that they don't have boops coming up, messages coming up, and we want to help them learn how to turn off their chat. Also making sure that they look at what's actually coming to them. Do they need to have a pop-up that tells them a new video has come up on YouTube? No, they don't. Do they need to know that something new has been posted into maybe one of their social media accounts that they might have? No, they don't. And so we need to help them decide what's really important to know now and what do I need to turn off and shut off. And also, there are some tools like, for example, Stay Focused, and also Screen Time, which is that symbol of the hourglass there. Those are tools that can help the kids look at how they're using their time and identify the areas where they're having distractions. So again, not using it to say, as a penalty, but instead to say, wow, I'm doing too much of this. I need to know how to block this. Stay Focused is quite good for that, in that the kids can say, you know what, I know that I go to this site too often. I'm going to turn off permission for myself during class time, or I'm going to turn off permission for myself when I'm studying. And we want the kids to develop those strategies. The other thing as well is other devices. So having a phone, if your child does have a mobile phone or even another video game console, those should be separate and away when they're supposed to be doing their work. Because again, those are distractions. The noise of knowing a message has come in, the noise of hearing that there's an update, those are things we need to put away. So again, we can do that deeper learning. But what's most important again is that we're helping our kids identify those strategies and how to distractions and how to manage them, and help them identify the tools that they can use. The other thing I highly recommend is keeping it separate. I realize that again, the kids love their computers and they have put a lot on them. But we sometimes need to help kids decide what really needs to be on there when you're learning and what could be recreational. So as much as possible, I do recommend that games, social media, any of those kinds of things, if possible, can be kept off of that computer and used in a different device. It's a way to actually physically separate the learning from the social and help to minimize those distractions if possible. I realize that some things may only be able to work on the computer, but it's really important, again, that this is a way we can help kids think and come up with strategies. How can I help manage myself and make sure that I am, I can have fun, but then I can also concentrate as well. Finally, one of the other things that we've talked with parents as well is that idea of family media agreements. These are ways that you as a family can talk about what are some ways that we agree in our house that we will use technology. Again, we're going to send out a document later that will have some examples of family media agreements that you might like to create, but they go along with the idea of when do we agree of how we use technology, what are our expectations for if you want to use something new, what are our agreements for dinner time, what are agreements for when we shut down at night. These are all things that you can talk about as a family, and it's really important that you do have these conversations with your child. That also helps them. Having that conversation about what is it do you think gets in the way of your learning. And I've worked with kids who have been sent to me because it's become a problem. And they do recognize, they usually do know what's getting in the way, but they just don't know how to manage it. And so that's where we have to have those conversations with them. So family media agreements can be a very helpful starting point. And even looking at yourself as a parent, we agree at dinner times that no one will bring their phone to the dinner table. That might be one place to start, so that you're also recognizing your own media habits as well. Now, some parents may feel that they need to use parental controls. Now, parental controls are set up by a parent, controlled by a parent, and established by a parent. These are things that can control what websites are accessed. It might automatically shut down the computer at a certain amount of time, or it might log their activity. There are external programs that do this, and there are also internal programs that can work within the Mac. This sounds like a great idea, but there are some issues that are associated with this. Part of the problem is that when you've done this, it may interfere with their ability to actually do work at the school, because some of those programs interfere with the computer's ability to connect through our Wi-Fi, to connect to certain programs, or by accident, settings that may have been put in place have shut things down that needed to be open during class time. As well, the issue is that when it's a top-down approach, it means that this has been imposed on the student. And so they may not develop their own strategies. They may not develop their own. And remember, scary as it is, because I realize my child's in grade 8, he's going to be in university in just over 4 years. And I'm thinking, my goodness, I've got to make sure that when I'm not there to say to him, this is too much, he in his head needs to know, whoa, I need to shut down, this is too much. And so it's so important now while he's in middle school that we're helping him develop his strategies about recognizing distractions and when it's too much, so that when I'm not there, he's able to make those good choices. So we need to also remember too that if we just put these in place as an answer, we haven't had conversations. And it also puts in a false sense of security. We can feel that by putting these blocks in place, that everything's taken care of and everything will be safe. But I can tell you that middle school students many of them are quite tech savvy. And unfortunately, some of them will find ways to get around the safety that perhaps you feel has been put in place. And so instead, we don't want it to be about sneaking. We want it to be about making good choices.
Thank you, Ms. Roy. So yeah, this is what 21st century learning looks like. And it's so important for us, for students to learn how they learn best. And when they're given these tools and when they work together, I think they can go a really long way when they learn how to learn. And there's no one size fits all approach. I think everyone is going to look a little bit different. Every family is going to look a little bit different with their family agreements. But if you do need help, we are here to support you. We're talking about this in advisory in our health units that the counselors go into. So we really are sending the same message to the students. But if you do find that you need additional support, please contact your teachers, your counselor, or Mrs. Roy, and so that we can partner together to support you as you navigate the online world of learning.
Excellent. We really just want to thank so much Mrs. Roy and Mrs. Beck today for sharing their expert knowledge on behalf of our whole middle school team. This is something, as Ms. Beck was sharing, we have the same message going out to students, and we really are on the same page with this with our faculty and with everyone. And I think having that parent support at home continues to be helpful. Again, we're always here with your questions and also willing to have meetings with you and your child if that's necessary. But we really think that this is an important time in children's lives to be able to start to manage their own tech with that scaffolding from grade 6, 7, and 8. So at this point, if people have any questions, I'm not seeing any in the Q&A box, but here I'm seeing one now. So let's we can take a moment in order to answer some questions. So we have a question here. We've asked our child to separate social media and gaming programs on a different laptop, but it seems that teachers allow students to play video games after class when class is over or at lunch. I wish students would be encouraged to choose other entertainment modes than gaming and social media during school timing. I think that is an excellent question, and I would be happy to address that as we were just talking about this with our updated technology agreements with blended learning. I think one thing to really keep in mind, as was mentioned throughout the presentation, is we're in very different times right now, and students are quite limited in what they are able to do. And so when students come to campus, as you know, instead of having the ability to just kind of roam around until school starts, they go directly to their first block class. They have lunch in the classroom. They have recess with a group. After school, they need to stay in their classroom until they leave campus. So there really is a lot less opportunity for those social connections, as we were sharing earlier. And so now we still have our same policies about no gaming before school. We really want students to be able to center themselves and get ready for the day. But there are occasional times, and it doesn't happen often, but sometimes during a lunch or a advisory time in the middle of the day, we do let students just blow off a little bit of steam. And sometimes that does involve gaming. We do have specific rules about what types of games are allowed. And then sometimes also after school, if there is a student left in a classroom waiting for a bus, although that's a later or less of a wait time now, or for an after school activity to begin. But you're totally right. Like, we do have a lot of conversations with students about other ways to interact. Sometimes they're interacting with each other through the games. So I think, again, that's a little bit of that grain of salt when your child might be saying, oh yeah, game all the time, all day long. Perhaps that's not really true, but we really are trying to help navigate right now in COVID specifically, when kids aren't able to get outside and have those social connections that they normally are. So yeah, just wanted you to know we really are all on the same page about that and having those conversations all the time. We'll just do a little bit of wait time to see if anyone else has any questions. All right, Mrs. Roy and Ms. Beck, was there anything else that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I think, you know, middle school is obviously such a transitional time, and I know it might feel like if you haven't started these conversations, or if you haven't come to these family agreements yet, I don't want you to feel like it's too late. You can always pull that parent card, and it's okay to do it. We're giving you that permission to pull that parent card with your child. It might be more difficult the older they become, but it's never too late to support them. And they might kick and they might scream and throw a temper tantrum, but I do think that yeah, it's never too late. And in the long run, they will thank you. They will thank you. And so I hope that this has been empowering for you for now you to move forward to help empower your student.
Excellent, thank you. And the talk will be available online, as all Talk Tuesdays are. And as we noted, we will be sending out some links with that, things for Common Sense Media, some different templates and ideas for those family agreements. So thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll see you next time on another Talk Tuesday. Thank you.